Okay, thank you. Now that we have all of our panelists here, we'll begin. Welcome to the 2024 MSU Latinx Film Festival. We're a film festival, but we're a film festival that tackles difficult topics. And so in the past, we focused largely on immigration issues and specifically the crisis around DACA early on in our first edition, a crisis that has not gone away. But because of the tragedy that happened on this campus a year ago, we decided that this year, since we always run our festival in February, we would tackle the issue of gun violence in the United States and beyond. As part of that, we've invited Patricia and Manny Oliver as our invited guests, along with others, to put on Manny's play, but also to be with us for a number of events, including this panel, which is specifically on the lawsuit for survival, with which both Patricia and Manny filed recently in the fall, along with Arturo Carrillo, who's joining us virtually as well. And this lawsuit, if you don't have a lot of information about it, you're about to learn a lot, but the basic information is that it was filed in conjunction with Global Action on Gun Violence. And Arturo Carrillo is one of the lawyers representing the case. He is the director of the George Washington University Law School's Civil and Human Rights Clinic. And Patricia and Manny Oliver have been activists since the Parkland shooting, and their organization is called Change the Ref, and I will let them say more about themselves and specifically about the lawsuit. I'd like to ask Patricia first if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what led to the idea to file this lawsuit.
Well, we've been always thinking about moving forward with taking action about gun violence. So for that reason, we were in connection through John Lowy. He met Manuel in a trip in Mexico. And then we were considering, he said to Munshi about what it should be done from the international perspective. And we start having meetings with Arturo and John, because in the Organization of American States, they've been talking about gun violence, but no one seriously is being claiming or demanding human rights of the ones that are being lost to gun violence specifically. We decided to move forward with this lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you my point of view as a no lawyer person, so Arturo can give you more details. But basically, we lost our son Joaquin at the Parkland shooting. Joaquin was shot 4 times with an AR-15. And we believe since that day that the system failed. And not only failed on one occasion, but it's continued to fail on daily basis. 2 days ago, we were on the news trying to talk about the commemoration of the Parkland shooting and remembering the victims. And our interview was interrupted by another shooting. So it's happening. It hasn't stopped. And as a result of that, Patricia and myself and thousands of others have been knocking doors and going to different entities. We went to Congress. We went to Senate. We had meetings, individual meetings. We were in the Oval Office. We were with the President of the United States in the Oval Office talking about this. So in other words, we ran out of entities. Where else can we go? And this is when the magic of Joaquin continuously finding us and connecting dots. And we met, as Patricia mentioned, in Mexico with this great guy, John Lowy, Jonathan, who's a good friend of us now, and his organization, Global Action on Gun Violence. We said, you know what, let's merge efforts and let's try to get this issue out of the limits of our country. Between other reasons, because gun violence in the United States are also affecting neighbor countries. It's not a secret that guns have been trafficked on a daily basis from the United States to Mexico. Once they get to Mexico, the cartels and organized crime will have them, and they can make more drugs, and they can you know, then you see the desplazados and you see the whole communities suffering. And actually the root of the problem, it's on our side. So we still, some people think that we need to build a wall to stop people from coming in. I suggest that we build something similar to a wall to stop guns going out. So that's my perspective as a father, and I would love Arturo to give you more details on the lawsuit itself and how it's going to work.
So Arturo, let's shift to you and your perspective. So this lawsuit is filed in the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which is a body that retains an autonomous body, but has a relationship to the Organization of American States. Could you talk a little bit about that entity and what it means to go to that juridical body for this case, and what are some of the things you expect to get out of the case?
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, let me just say what a pleasure it is to be here with you, and how great it is to see Manny and Patricia. Muchos saludos, un abrazo de mi parte, and to share with you this journey that we have started together. Before I get into the sort of the legal part of it, I want to just give a little background to how we got to the case, and then I'll answer all those questions, I hope. But John Lowy, so a mutual friend of ours, director of the Global Action on Gun Violence, a year and a half ago was just starting to lay the groundwork for this organization, whose purpose is to try to, as Manny said, take the issue of gun violence out of just the sole context of U.S. politics, which are so petrified and so toxic and negative, and right. So and he, brilliant guy, has a number of ideas, and he reached out to me 2 summers ago and said, do you think human rights can help with this issue in any way? Is this something that human rights has addressed or could address? And I said, well, to be honest, I'm not sure that human rights law has been fully exploited, fully utilized to move forward the gun control agenda and to combat the policies and practices that feed gun violence, including the cases that have come up in Parkland in particular. And so we started talking, and I came back to him and I said, look, I think the Organization of American States, the human rights system within that organization, could offer an opportunity to bring a specific case, to the attention of the international community. And I said, but I don't know, do you know of anyone that would be willing to pursue this? Because it's hard. It's a lot of attention, it's a lot of publicity, it's a lot of controversy. And he immediately said, I got the guy for you. He said, yeah, I was just on a trip to Mexico and I met, Manny Oliver, and he's the guy. And I said, well, okay, all right. Well, you got to talk to him first and make sure he understands. And so that's how it began. And from day one, I got to say, from both Manny and Patricia, there has been a solidarity of purpose and understanding of why we're doing this. And it has allowed us to put together, I think it's fair to say, lawyers say groundbreaking a lot, but this one actually is a novel initiative, an important initiative, the first of its kind, to bring a case arising from a gun massacre in the United States in a lawsuit against the United States for its failures to prevent that, and many other shootings, obviously, but this one in particular, or to take adequate measures to redress it after the fact. So that's what the case is about at heart, and it's about Joaquin in particular, and his case. We filed it in November. It's called the Lawsuit for Survival. It's part of a campaign that GAGV and Manny and all of us are sort of moving forward. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about the legal aspects of it, Professor Bohm. I feel like those might get kind of boring, and I don't want people's eyes glazing over with that piece of it. I think it's more important in the big picture of what we're trying to do with the initiative. But I will say that it seeks to hold the United States accountable under regional human rights law for these failures to prevent the shooting in Parkland and many others like it, or to provide adequate remedies to the victims, right, to the family members and the people who lose their lives like Joaquin in these shootings. And the facts are pretty stark. in that regard, right? The lack of an adequate regulatory regime, that is to say, a legal framework of gun control measures in the country is notorious around the world. In some places in the U.S., it's easier to get a license to buy a gun than it is to own a dog. It's just so that level of absurdity makes it very likely that the U.S. Is, well, not likely, no, it is absolutely falling short of its obligations under international law to protect its own citizens, right, from the right to be free from gunfire. At the same time, it doesn't provide adequate remedies to folks like Manny and Patricia after a shooting and a massacre like Parkland or any other. The gun industry manufacturers in particular enjoy near complete legal immunity. People are shocked to discover that the manufacture of guns for civilian purchase is the only commercial activity that isn't subject to consumer protections. Every other consumer product that you can buy has protections except for guns, which are the ones that most need it, right? So the absurdity of it just grows and grows and grows. So we put all that into a lawsuit, an 81-page petition that we filed and did an event around. And what it seeks is, first and foremost, a declaration, a recognition that the United States has failed the Olivers. It has failed them and everyone else that has been subject to this kind of violence through guns and uncontrolled gun violence. It failed to prevent the killing of Joaquin and others, and has not done enough after the fact to provide full redress under international human rights law. So that's what the case is about. And I'm happy to talk more about the technicalities of it, if people are interested. I think more importantly than the legal case itself is what it means and symbolizes. It is, just as Manny said, an escalation, right, of this issue and to another level, a regional level, an international level, a diplomatic level, one that gives sort of new, I think, direction and momentum to the anti-gun violence work that many of us are doing in different areas. We're hoping that the Inter-American Commission, the ultimate outcome from a legal point of view is a decision, which they call a report, but reads like a judgment, because the Inter-American Commission, while not a formal court per se, is a legal body, what we call a quasi-legal or a quasi-jurisdictional body. So it has legal authority to interpret the Inter-American human rights law and say, in this case, the United States has failed in its obligation. So we're looking for that declaration of responsibility, right? That's a step towards accountability. And we're looking for recommendations to the United States from the Commission to adopt, remedial measures to reform its laws and not allow for such easy access to guns for lack of control and so forth and so on, right? Lack of enforcement of rules that do exist and that sort of thing. That's the legal dimension of it. But beyond that, we're trying to rally international attention around the issue. And really, I'd let Manny and Patricia talk more about their efforts and others' efforts to do that. So I hope I touched at least partially in response to most of your questions.
Yeah, I'd like to turn it back over in just a second. I have one technical question for you.
Sure.
Of interest. So you mentioned the right to be free from gun violence, but you're operating within an international law sphere. So could you tell us, is the right to be free from gun violence enshrined in international law as a human right, or is this case making the argument that it should be and would contribute to establishing that right in international law?
Good question. The short answer is that it is not codified in those terms, but it is in fact enshrined in the universal right to life. Mm-hmm. So right to life in the international human rights context and the international law context means something completely different, not completely different, but substantively different than right to life in a US political context. So I'm not talking about the right to life in a sort of anti-abortion kind of setting, which unfortunately confuses the two. Right to life under international law is the right to enjoy your life free of government interference, right? So, and interference by third parties, for instance, things like foreseeable gun violence from private actors, whether they be delinquents, criminals, or others. so the country, a state like the United States has an obligation to protect the right to life by adopting measures to ensure that people get to enjoy it. And that's where the right to be free from gun violence comes in. It's an interpretation, a valid, technically sound interpretation of the right to life under these circumstances. So the answer to your question is yes, right? Indirectly, it's in there, but it's very much anchored in the right to life, understood in this sort of international law way. So hopefully that answers that part.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So we can take some questions in a bit, and if anyone has any other legal technical questions, we'll direct them to Arturo. Turning back to both of you, I have one question. You filed this case in November against the United States. What has your experience been since filing it? How do you feel about it? What's it like to take such a bold stand against the country that you've immigrated to from Venezuela? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's not about the country that I immigrated to. I think what's happening here is not good, period. I live here, yes. There are wonderful things in here, yes. This one is not good. It's not cool. And for some reason, I think that we don't want to fix it. There's a lot of resistance to stop these things from happening. And the only thing that I can find as an answer to that is the greedy side of the gun manufacturers making more and more money. It makes total sense. When they tell you that you need to be afraid, you need a gun, you should be concerned about your life and protecting your family, go and get a gun. And that message is being sent to all of us. So at some point, we're all afraid of each other. And it escalates. You have an argument in the United States, and it could easily become someone getting shot. You have the same argument in another nation, and probably someone getting kicked. And that's it. We're out, done. So we are allowing these to happen. And we need to do things to stop looking at these as a normal thing. That brings the litigation process. We are doing something that has no precedent. I think that because of the United States fail on Joaquin, I think Joaquin has the right to go after the United States. I'm not even putting scales in here. And don't ask me to put scales because I will never have anything higher than my son. Doesn't matter what it is. So for me, it's very clear. It's Joaquin's right to do this. No one has done it before. Well, that's not my fault. I mean, probably some people will start doing this same thing. And most important, I finish with this, is more than the result. It's about the process. We are activists. We do activism against gun violence. That's our battle. That's it. That's our battle. And this gives us opportunities to do our activism outside of the United States. We are globalizing the issue. So it's not anymore, this is America and we do what we want. No, dude, no. This is, by the way, this is part of America and you don't do what you want because there are principles and there are commitments that we sign as a nation with other nations. So now we can go to Jamaica, now we can go to the Caribbean and have a form of activism to fight gun violence in the United States. And that, my friends, is so powerful. And it hasn't been tested. I want to try that. I want to prove myself wrong. And I will make sure that during that process, that I understand it takes years, we are increasing the rejection to gun violence in the United States.
Yeah, the purpose also is because they took Joaquin's pursuing of life and happiness in every single way. So he couldn't graduate from high school. He couldn't have his longtime girlfriend, maybe getting married. And we are focusing on Joaquin because it's our son. But also what we are pretending with this lawsuit is to bring more families or more victims of losing a loved one to gun violence part of this lawsuit. But we are initiating this process. And this is very important because, Organization of American States, not everybody knows about this organization. And this is a very important organization. We as Venezuelans, we've been having the secretary of the Organization of American States in Venezuela for the human rights because the political situation that we had there. But here is totally different. We have to fight against the danger of gun violence. And that's not right. That's not right. So this is the purpose. And thank you to Arturo and to John to be able to put this together and keep going. So this is another thing that we have to work together.
And one more thing, there's no winning here for us, okay? We're not gonna win anything. You understand that we lost this 6 years ago. We started fighting, losing. So this is not about winning. This is about preventing these tragedies to continue happening. And we decided to take that. We signed for the job. Me and Patricia, or our retirement plan is protect others going through this. You don't need this. You don't want to be in a panel talking about this. You don't want to have a lawsuit process with no one. I want to watch the Super Bowl with my son. It's not going to happen. Here we are.
So I would like to open it up for discussion and questions, but before we do that, one way that people can get involved to support the lawsuit is to go to the Global Action on Gun Violence website.
Right.
There's a petition there that everyone can sign to demonstrate support. You can share that
Yes,
after you
please.
sign it with other people, other organizations that you're involved in, your members. We have some activists in the audience today, so that's one thing that people can do. Are there any other ways that people can engage to support the lawsuit specifically? Or is there anything else you would like to share about all the initiatives that you're engaged in that also people could support?
No, let's, there's too many. So,
Yeah.
so let's stay with this one. This is so
Website.
important. That's the easiest way. You go to the Global Action on Gun Violence website, which is an amazing website, and you can see everything that we are doing there. And you can sign for the petition. We want signatures from all around the world. This is like the Greenpeace of gun violence. That's how we like to see it. And we needed that, the attention. We got interviews a couple of days ago from New Zealand. It was a morning show and it was 2 p.m. here. And they don't understand what's going on in here. So we need those voices. We had an interview with the BBC, a couple of them. So we have the whole planet. It's like looking at us like, why? How come you don't fix this? In the United States, you're not able to fix this? You go to the moon. I was about to curse a minute. Get it? See how I hold myself? Good. I'm learning. All right.
Do we have any questions from the audience? And we have a microphone for people who are on the webinar. If you don't mind just going to the mic. You can also take it down if you'd like off of the stand.
Couple of questions. Is it on? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was not aware of these organizations. So I'm curious if you could explain, okay, Global Action Gun Violence, that's a group that existed that you've joined together with. The Organization of American States. So is that just North and South America, North Central and South America? What is that organization? I guess I'm curious about that. And also, Patricia, did you say that other families can join the lawsuit with you?
Yes, in a long term that they will.
Okay.
They will be able. Arturo is the one I think that's the best to be answering the questions and explaining better.
Okay.
Why in America, in United States, I mean, they don't know really about the Organization of American States. Arturo?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yes, the OAS, the Organization of American States, is a club of countries in the Western Hemisphere. So you're right. It's North America, Central America, South America. It operates kind of like regionally in the way that the United Nations might operate globally. It has a General Assembly, and it has, you know, political organs. One of which is the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which is the one where we have filed the lawsuit. It actually predates the United Nations, interestingly enough. So that's the OAS. In terms of other families joining the cause and the lawsuit, the lawsuit right now is specifically for the Olivers. It's in the name of Joaquin and Patricia and Manny. So the idea is that anyone in a similar situation can bring the same kind of a lawsuit, not necessarily that we could just plug them into this one. But depending on the case, it's like we're blazing a trail, or Manny and Patricia are, that others could follow in. So that's really the idea there. And I think legally we will create that trail, that pathway, if you will, for others to follow in. But the case is, at least as a technical matter, is the family.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Arturo. We have another question.
A question and comment. I came across American States because of my profile. I'm not American, even though I can trace my ancestry 4 or 5 generations. You're always being asked, especially when you cross the border, they don't ask you anymore, are you American? Now they ask if you're a U.S. citizen. But I remember going through the borders, you're an American. I said, yeah, everybody in this continent is an American. So I became aware of the Association of American States, especially with individuals who were Mexican Americans from the United States, wanted to be part of the association, representing the United States. So that's how I came to knowledge. I just finished reading a book on the Jesuits. And so your comment related to making this into a global fight. I couldn't imagine a better army than the Jesuits, for example. They're all over the world. They're all over the world. And have they been approached, the Secretary General, and that the term general is not referred in the military sense, but in administrative sense, to buy into this? Because in reading about the Jesuits were one of the first organizations that were globally. They were involved in putting together treaties, including George Washington, and with Canada and the United States and Britain. So they've got a fantastic infrastructure. I'm thinking the Dominicans are in the same boat. I'm thinking the Franciscans are in the same boat. I'm thinking of some of the organizations of sisters who are also in the same boat. That would seem logical that these organizations would be like an easy win or an easy ask. But I don't know if that's been an option. And I'm only thinking Catholicism because of the hemisphere, but there's also Protestant organizations. There's also non-Christian organizations who are also involved and have a global reach. And I'm just wondering, from a legal point of view, can they be approached or asked to write a brief on your behalf, a brief for this, because you're taking it bigger than the United States, and you're taking it bigger than the continent. So it seems to me, a logical jump would be to look at who are the global actors who might be interested in buying into and having no discussions. And now, because you had a meeting with New Zealand or in Australia or any place else over Zoom, that's no longer an option. Traveling is no longer an issue. It's communications and networks that nothing. And so finally, having grown in a farm, you grew up with a 22. You grew up with a shotgun. So hunting was always part of that job. And it was an easy conclusion for me to say hunting is very different than buying semi-automatics or guns of war. to be owned in your household or in the city or in the suburbs, regardless. And somehow we need to break that, because I think there are people who want to enjoy the sport, but not necessarily want to be part of that other venue. And I don't know how that bridge is made, but I think it's an important bridge to make, because now I keep track of hunting, because I still hunt, is bow hunting has increased a lot more than really rifle hunting because of the challenge, because you have to be a better hunter if you're going to go bow hunting than if you're going to be hunting with a rifle. So I don't know. These ideas have been popping in my mind because I've been thinking about it for a long time. And so I wanted to take the opportunity, having you here on campus,
Sure.
to have that kind of interaction.
Let me, thank you. I'll share a couple of thoughts here. Let's start with the second part of your comments. Hunting. Some species are protected with the amount of rounds that hunters use. In Florida, for example, right? Not humans. Some species are protected, not humans. Hunting, I'll take that. Do we need more than 400 million weapons? Are we that hunting society? I don't think so. Do you hunt with an AR-15? If you hunt with an AR-15, you're hardly gonna eat anything from that animal. You're gonna destroy the animal. So hunting is not at all the reason why we should not move on having restrictions. I will maintain that position, because as much as I respect the passion that some people have for hobbies or traditions, I respect more the life of their kids. And I always say they're kids, so they don't call me selfish. Because we reach that point sometimes. Oh, you're only thinking about your kid and family. Well, yes, my kid was shot. So I think that if you're a hunter, you should be able to carry a gun for that purpose. Your ammunition should be limited to that purpose. And you should renew your license, and there should be some kind of protocol that has registration and can track where your weapon is and how you're using it. What I just said is not something that I created. It's the right way of doing things. It's an industry that is not regulated at all. Guess what? I have a motorcycle. I have to wear a helmet. I had to endorse my license so I could ride a motorcycle. And I had to register my motorcycle every year. And if I hurt someone with my motorcycle, I'm in big trouble. And if I decided to have some drinks before riding the motorcycle and I hurt someone, I'm going to go to jail. So there's a lot of regulations in the land of regulations, with the exception of the gun industry that has a green light to do whatever they want. Okay. And to the first part of your question, the most powerful network that is out there is the youth. The youth are connected. The ones in Australia with the ones in Europe, with the ones in the United States. It's a way of exchanging what we want as a future. When I was 17 years old, it was hard to see what the 17-year-old in France was doing. Not anymore. Young generation, it's very concerned about climate change. They're very concerned about civil rights, gay rights, and they are very concerned about gun violence. So that's the army, that's the globalization that I'm visualizing. Like, and I will take your word and find out more about those suggestions that you're bringing, of course. But I see this as a movement that if it's led by the youth, there's no way that it can lose the battle. It's their future. You will decide where you want to live or not. And they don't like war in general. They don't like guns. And they will achieve that. We are just putting some platforms together here so they can use them.
I'm very grateful to my grandmother when I first got my single shot 22. And my father gave it to me. And my grandmother said, estos son instrumentos del diablo. And so immediately you got a lesson that says, you need to be careful with this. Because these can kill, they can kill anything. Doesn't make a difference if it's a human or species. It can kill. And I'm just wondering where those lessons are gone. Where have they gone? And regardless of for hunting or anything else, but where have the lessons that our ancestors knew, where have they gone?
I don't know. I mean, I think more than lessons, they should be regulations again. The amount of guns that are stolen from cars, for example, it's huge.
Yeah, and I think also about what you were saying about your grandma. It's about principles, you know, the households today, now they're confusing guns with the Bible, putting the Bible and the guns together,
Right.
that the Bible says. So there is a lot of manipulation nowadays that they are trying to convince us that this is by God, that God says, and that is not correct. So that's why we have all to be very clear, and we need to raise our voices, and we are not silly. Talking about you guys, you're young, a lot younger than we are, that we have to show that we are educated and we understand what you just said. We need that.
They're not a lot younger.
They are a lot. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
But
I have
that's all
I have a
is working.
question. We can sign the petition. How will the lawsuit show up on a regular basis? I know you mentioned one time, Manny, that there will be hearings. So Arturo, what else, how else? Because it's a long view, right? This thing is going to take, you've taken a long view with this lawsuit. I mean, you've taken a long view with all of this, but the lawsuit is not going to be solved tomorrow or next year or a bunch of years. So what are the specifics that you will be able to then show up in? And I know that it will continue to motivate you and all of us in doing this.
That's for Arturo.
Yes. Yeah, happy to chime in. Thank you for that question, and also from the prior one. So the lawsuit does allow us or create for us opportunities to show up and to continue to advocate and generate attention and pressure in a couple of ways. The first is just procedurally, the way that lawsuits move through the OAS system, or like any sort of legal system that looks at cases, will create certain opportunities. So for example, the next opportunity that we will get most likely to talk about the lawsuit will be at a hearing that we request from the Inter-American Commission on the suit itself regarding what's called admissibility. So in the legal process, the first stage, like again, pretty much any legal or judicial process, there's an admissibility stage where the commission reviews to make sure that the case meets all the technical requirements of a lawsuit that can proceed to be studied on the merits. That is, to look at the actual claims and allegations and see if there has been a violation of human rights or not. That process in the Inter-American system to study admissibility, this first stage, that can take anywhere between 2 and 4 years, which is not quick. The hearing that we want to get on the lawsuit, probably, I don't know that we'd get to it before next year, I think in the best instance. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it in other contexts, which I'll mention in a minute, but in terms of the lawsuit itself, I think if in a year from now, we're talking about a hearing at the Inter-American Commission, we'll be in good shape. We have asked for what's called expedited review. We have said to the Inter-American Commission, this case is so important. It's so paradigmatic of a problem that affects so many other people that you should be processing it on an accelerated basis, which it's something the procedure allows for. And we hope to get, I expect to get, expedited review, and that might move things up a little bit. So procedurally, there's only the opportunities come up every couple of years. Admissibility first, then we can do a hearing on the merits. That might be, 4 to 6 years. If they don't expedite, if they do, it might be a little quicker. And then ultimately there's a judgment, a decision. Each of these procedural moments, and especially the admissibility decision and the final decision, which kind of operates as a judgment, are the highest profile moments or opportunities where you can get a lot of attention, like we did with the filing. The filing was a very important procedural. We did a lot of media and an event and interviews on that day, November 9th. So that's as a formal matter. We can make the lawsuit show up many other ways, though, and I think that might even be more important than the procedural opportunities. The campaign, networking, bringing in other allies. Manny talked about bringing in youth around the world. The gentleman's question before about Jesuits and religious organizations as natural allies is a good one. There are opportunities to get outside contributions to the lawsuit in the form of amicus briefs. That is, a brief that an interested party can file, in this case with the commission, to say we think there are some really good reasons to decide in favor of the Olivers and to find the U.S. in violation of its human rights obligations and so forth. That won't happen until a later stage, though. That we don't get the opportunity to submit amicus briefs. I think until the merit stage, although maybe we could do it sooner. I'd have to double check, but usually it's the merit stage. But we can still operate outside the procedure. We can hold events. We can do marches. We can do online webinars like this. This is part of the strategy, right? And we're gonna move every lever we can and do everything we can to keep the case relevant, to keep it in the public eye as much as possible. Manny and Patricia are doing a great job of that. And you're contributing now with this event. So I hope that answers the questions.
Hi, I had a question both for Arturo and Manny and Patricia. This is kind of related. Try to make it brief. With the Oxford shooting, both Ethan Crumley's parents were charged, or Will, I know his mother was charged with a bunch of charges regarding that they, were held liable and negligent. Do you think like those, maybe prosecuting people responsible, especially the parents, would that be something that you think would affect the lawsuit, or, how would that change in the era of gun violence and, the change of gun laws and things like that in America so far?
What I see that will happen, which for me is the most important thing, is that parents will look better at their guns where they are located. Because now, if you put the gun in the wrong place, you can end up in jail. So accountability, it was shown that day, and immediately, I know that the legal process might be different from now on because of precedents like that one. But the more important, how many houses had that same issue or could have had that same issue those days, like a gun misplaced and kids playing around? Thousands, if not millions. So I thought, okay, this is good because it's like a campaign, you can spend years throwing a campaign about safe storage, and that thing in one day, that Yuri sent the perfect message. You don't have safe storage, you end up in jail. So good for them.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and add that it's a great question. It definitely is relevant to our lawsuit generally, or similar type actions that one might take in the future. It's important for the reasons Manny says, the accountability of how it increases sort of de facto more attention to supervision of guns, and that's a good thing. It wouldn't necessarily change our approach to the lawsuit at the Inter-American Commission, because what we're saying is that not that the United States, didn't take some legal measures to deal with, the crimes committed. So, for instance, in the Parkland case, the shooter is in jail for life. But that doesn't excuse the U.S. from its responsibility to fully redress the harms of the shooting that it allowed to happen because it doesn't have an adequate gun control regime in place, a legal regime in place. The reason why there's more to be done on the side of redress after the fact is because under U.S. law, you can't bring lawsuits for the most part against manufacturers of guns, distributors, or sellers that might engage in negligent or reckless or even unlawful conduct. Military style weapons, AR-15s and such, are marketed to young men. There are very few controls on who can buy an assault weapon. If you're 18 in Florida, you can buy that. No controls on ammunition, and so forth. So we believe, as Manny I mentioned earlier, there is misconduct. There is unlawful conduct at worst and negligent, reckless at best by manufacturers, distributors, and retailers of weapons in places like Florida and Texas. That should be actionable as a legal matter when it crosses a legal line. And the problem is those lines don't exist right now, and where they do, the U.S. doesn't enforce them. So that's the problem that isn't addressed by appropriate lawsuits for negligence on the part of parents, or even the persecution of perpetrators themselves. That's just not enough to stop this problem from happening.
And it's about following the law, by the way. I've heard several times criminals don't follow the law. Well, and civilians also don't follow the law. Okay, you cannot buy a gun if you're not 18 years old. This mother gave us a present, a gun, to a 15-year-old. Who is preventing that from happening? How is that even possible? Why? It's a gift. So you cannot buy it. So I'm going to give you as a gift. If someone sees that I'm giving you as a gift a box of scotch or cigarettes, I'm in trouble. But I can give you a gun as a gift. I've seen car dealers that if you buy the truck, you get a free AR-15. I've seen raffles that if you win, you get an AR-15. How can you win an AR-15? Where's the background check? So it's like almost ironic. They do whatever they want. We had enough. Not only us, everybody. We had enough, dude. Stop playing with us and or the things that we want and the things that we don't want. That's it. It's time to really be demanding for things. I'm not saying this to sound, oh, he's demanding. No. Fucking demand for the change that we're looking for. Period. To everyone, to the Republicans and to Democrats. To everyone.
So under like best case scenario, what's the conclusion to this campaign with the lawsuit? Are there examples with the commission of coming to a resolution and then being able to provide necessary leverage to make change happen? So that's question one. And two, Manny, you mentioned it at the top. I'd love to talk a little bit about what it is. Seem talked out enough about how the guns from our country are fueling the violence and drug trade in other countries. And that's just a topic I'd love to just be talked about a little bit more, because I think that point isn't hit enough.
Okay.
With the first one.
Arturo?
Yeah, with respect to the first part of that, yes, that's more or less accurate. The outcome that we seek is a favorable decision that puts into a legal, form a lot of the concern that the commission has expressed over decades now about the lack of regulation of firearms in the U.S. and about the consistent mass shootings and massacres that occur as a result. The commission is on record of expressing concern over and over after every mass shooting, about that. But they haven't actually analyzed it under regional human rights law, under international law in a case. And that's what this is going to do. So that's going to end it will be a high-profile legal decision that will give shape and form to the obligations of the United States, why it has failed to meet them, and why it's liable under international law for those failures. And that is a ratcheting up of the, terms of the discussion of the US's failures in terms of gun violence and gun control. And it should, we hope, it will provide a very strong input into the advocacy around that we're all doing. The ultimate goal of which is legal reform and accountability. I think, in a nutshell, right? We want U.S. policies and practices to come to be more protective of human life and less protective of gun industry and unfettered gun rights. And that's what this decision should help us do.
And back to the traffic of guns, let me just tell you the story, the daily story. In Mexico, there is no such a thing as a gun shop. You don't go to buy a gun to any place. They have an entity that purchase weapons for the law enforcement and the army, and a small percentage of those weapons, like 3-4%, end up in the wrong hands. Okay. However, our laws, if I live in a border state, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, California, I can, because I'm a responsible gun owner, I can go to a gun shop and I can buy 25 AR-15s and I want 25,000 ammunitions. One background check, okay? No red flags. No one is asking me if I'm going to destroy Texas. All right, deal, pay, done. And I drive a few miles to the borderline, and there's a cartel guy waiting for me. It has access. Here are your guns. Here's my money. And guess what? When they ask me, oh, I lost them. I lost the guns. So this same individual goes back to that same shop and buys another 10, 20, or 40 AR-15s. And you can repeat and repeat and repeat that cycle. Gun manufacturers are happy because they're sending more guns. This retailer is hitting a home run. It's probably the employee of the year. Mm-hmm. And then the whoever is making this deal is making a lot of money. No guilt, responsible gun owner, and the cartels can do more damage to people from Mexico. Well, that same thing happens in Jamaica, Dominican Republic, the Caribbean in general, and South America. That's the reality. I just told you something that happens, and the American states know that this is happening on daily basis, but we're selfish, so it's not affecting us, it's affecting them. So we're good with it. And we need that support from outside.
So we have time for one last question. Amy?
Well, I was just going to comment on what you're talking about, and for the students that are here that are working, as activists in Michigan, there are ideas and plans in place in other states that you could use as a template, but there are some states who consider a 1 gun a month purchase law, which would address that trafficking. It would, stop people from buying 25 guns at a time with no questions asked. And there was another, I can't think, there was a second law that you just touched on talking about that story, but maybe you could explain if do you know if anyone is doing any legal things to try to reverse the PLACA, which is the law that granted immunity to the gun industry?
Yeah, we're all trying to do that. But Arturo, maybe you want to talk about the lawsuit from Mexico to the gun manufacturers.
Yes. So the short answer to that excellent question is, yeah, a lot of us are trying to do something about PLACA, which is the law enacted by Congress to foreclose most lawsuits against manufacturers and distributors and other gun industry actors on the basis of, for harm caused by guns that they make or sell. And it's a very tough law to tackle in this way because because of just how ingrained the issue is in the United States. But there have been some cracks in the PLACA wall, if you will. So one of the most recent victories for accountability against gun industry, in spite of PLACA, is this lawsuit that our friend and colleague John Lowy for Global Action on Gun Violence has brought along with the government of Mexico against the top 6 or 7 gun manufacturers in the United States. So Smith & Wesson and many others in federal court, alleging that the sort of negligent and unlawful conduct that I was referring to earlier in terms of marketing and knowingly selling to people that shouldn't be buying guns and that sort of thing, that there's an exception to the immunity that PLACA affords, which is if another law is broken in the conduct that's being challenged. So by saying that the industry is breaking laws in the way that it markets and sells guns, the lawsuit that Mexico has brought with John's help is trying to hold the industry accountable for the trafficking and the harm that it causes specifically. A federal appeals court just a couple of weeks ago found that the lawsuit could proceed. It had been dismissed at the lower level in this district court because the judge there found that PLACA basically prohibited it. But the appeals court did say that if the litigants, if they could show that this conduct was in fact unlawful in the way that was claimed, then they would have threaded the needle, because it's like threading a needle to get an exception to apply under PLACA. Most cases don't make it through. At this point, that is the closest thing you're going to get in this country. In our lawsuit against the United States in the OAS, we make out, I think, a very strong claim for why PLACA as a whole, as configured, is unlawful under international human rights law, because it's a blanket grant of immunity with very narrow exceptions that don't really allow for the kind of justice and access to remedy that you need in these circumstances. So our lawsuit is very much centered on the legal framework that impedes accountability, front and center PLACA. So that's one, and other actions in domestic courts, like the case against the manufacturers brought by Mexico and GAGV is another example. And through all that, we're just trying to generate, attention to just why this legal regime is so bad and why it needs to change. But it's an uphill battle in this country. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you so much to our panelists and for our audience as well. And once again, to engage with this really important lawsuit that is groundbreaking, rightfully declared. Go to Global Action on Violence, the website, check out the petition, check out the very powerful video that's been produced, and please, we do encourage you to sign it and to share it with people friends and family members, members of your organizations, and other organizations that may not know about this lawsuit. So thank you once again. Thank you, Arturo.
Thank you,
joining
Arturo.
us.
Con mucho gusto. It was great to see you all, and nice meeting you. And keep up. Definitely get involved, get engaged, and contribute to this campaign. We can use all the help we can get. Hasta luego. Ciao.